Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today on AdWords scripts. We're glad you could be here to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about implementing some AdWords scripts and how you can use these to get some automated insights in your account. So I thought I'd just start by introducing the three of us here on the webinar today. So speaking currently, this is me, Sam Owen. I'm an account manager here at Hennepin Marketing. I've been in the PPC industry for about 3.5 years now, and I'm going to pass you over to Eric Couch.
Hi, my name is Eric Couch. I'm also an account manager here at Hennepin Marketing for about a year now, and I manage about $500,000 in spend across my client accounts. And I'm going to pass it off to Jacob Fairclough.
Yep. Hello, I'm Jacob Fairclough, and I'm the new guy of the bunch. I've only been here about 2 months, but I have a little bit of background in web development, so I've kind of just taken up the scripts and helping out the other account managers with that.
Sounds good. So we're going to have a couple of live poll questions for you guys at the start here, and then we're going to move on to our webinar. You can follow that on Twitter under Scripts Hennepin, and we'd be interested to hear any tweets from you guys while we're going. And we're going to start by talking about the benefits of using scripts, then go on to implementing scripts, resources and examples, script management, a few sample scripts that we'd like to talk to you guys about that we've been using that are pretty cool, and then a little bit of customization as well, so setting up your own alerts and how you can kind of use manual JavaScript to do that. And then we'll kind of finish with a Q&A at the end, so hopefully we'll have 15 minutes or so to answer any questions, and you can just submit any questions you've got as we go along, and we'll get around to them at the end. And again,
yeah, so if you'd like to take part in any of the live blogging on Twitter, just be sure to include the hashtag ScriptsHennepin in any of your Twitter tweets, and we'll be sure to see it. So to start with our first live poll question, so just how long have you been working in PPC? And you can include the hashtag ScriptsHennepin in any of your answers. So the responses we have are just started, 1 year or less, 2 to 3 years, or 5 years or more. So I think most of us here, we kind of run the gamut from all the answers here.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned, I'm 3.5 years. How long have you been doing PPC, Eric?
So just over a year, so you could classify me as a B. And Jacob?
It's a tough one for me. I'm a little bit between A and B. Like I said, I've only been on hand 2 months full time, but I had an internship for about 6 months beforehand.
So I guess we probably got 2 Bs and a C.
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah. All right, and then so for our second, oh, hold on, we got the results. So 21% of you are here less than 1 year, 26% of you have answered 1 to 3 years, 21% 3 to 5 years, and then we have the majority, 32% of you at 5+ years. So we have a lot of experienced people in the crowd today.
And that's hopefully good because we'll hopefully be diving into some fairly complex topics. We'll try and keep it at a fairly basic level to start with, but there'll be discussion around a few more complex things. So.
Yeah, but with any luck, we'll be able to show you guys something you haven't seen before.
So I guess the question we want to ask next is, how much have you used scripts in the past? This will kind of help guide our webinar. So none at all, a little, I've used some pre-made scripts, or I'm a script pro and I create custom scripts.
So I think most of us here, we kind of fall in kind of the, well, you and I would say, Sam and I fall into option B. So we have some pre-made scripts that we've made use of, but Jacob's the one, he's the one who's actually getting in there creating some custom scripts for us.
How much coding experience do you have before you joined Hennepin?
I've never gotten too deep with it, but I got quite a bit through school. Like I said, I did a few web development projects for school and outside of school, so just little things I picked up over time.
Cool. So it looks like the results of this question are that 80% of you have no script experience at all, which is great because that's pretty much where Eric and I came in for this.
Definitely.
And then it looks like 20% of you have used some pre-made scripts. So no one's a scripts pro, which should be good because we're not going to go super detailed level here. We're going to try and make sure you guys are comfortable with the basics and then kind of the intermediate steps as well. So hopefully this is kind of the right level for everyone.
Yeah, and just showing you kind of a demonstration of what they're capable of and some of the ways that you can make use of them.
So again, just to kind of reiterate, our aim today really is just to give you guys an introduction to scripts, what you can do, how you can use them, and what they can be used for. And we really hope that the kind of results of this webinar is you can take away 3 to 4 scripts, you can find where they are and how to use them. And then also you can start to think about maybe customizing a few scripts or involving some web developers on your team to help you guys out with PPC scripts you can implement, and then kind of a real basic overview of JavaScript that we'll go through at the end. And the benefits for this, so it's going to be really threefold. So with scripts, reporting is a big one. It saves you a bit of time. You can export reports automatically to Google Docs. You can set everything to automate and do that. You can make live changes in your account. So this is kind of something that's really interesting, doing bids, budgets, keywords, pausing keywords and unpausing, all that kind of thing in kind of real time, reacting to how your account's doing. And then something we do at Hannapin, so I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit, Jacob, but setting up notifications for alerts.
Yeah, it's a interesting thing. We talked a lot about reporting or getting the numbers, but one thing that these scripts can do is you can set up an email, and to really simplify it, you can just kind of look through your metrics, and maybe if there's a certain ratio between days or weeks, or maybe months, you can get an email telling you, alerting you to that, and you can know, well, I should go in my account and check that out.
Cool. So that's like if there's 20% less sales today or yesterday than the day before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the big 3 that I know a lot of the account managers here like to look at are impressions, conversions, and cost, all of which, if those are changing too much, it might indicate an issue.
Cool.
Okay, for here, we included a few resources for understanding scripts. Of course, there's plenty of stuff from Google, but here are a few outside references. The first one on here is a very general reference guide. I'm sure all of you have heard of Mozilla, and they're very big on open source software, and they have a lot of documentation on different web languages. And if you're interested in trying to learn more about JavaScript, I would definitely look at their material. You can find pretty much anything you could want there. The second one's going to be Code Academy. They have a bunch of tracks for different web programming languages and even HTML. And that's a really cool one. They have these broken down little modules that you can work through and continually, kind of build up your skills from not knowing anything to actually being functional and making your own programs. So I definitely recommend that. And then Stack Overflow is the last one. That one might be a little bit intimidating. It's kind of like a question and answer forum. But one thing to definitely check out there is there's going to be a lot of professionals, which is kind of intimidating, but it also means they have a lot of experience. And if you just want to take some time browsing their site, there's a lot of stuff about Google Scripts on there too that you can probably find some help on.
So I had a question for you. So of these, is there any cost involved to sign up for any of these, or any like registration? So what's involved?
All of these are actually free. For Mozilla, it's just reference documentation. I think they have a few guides on there, so it's just like a basic web page. You can go to that. Code Academy, I was talking about, has a bunch of modules, and really you want to kind of probably save your progress so you can go back at a later point. And that will require a free account. And if you want to be active on Stack Overflow, you should have an account too if you want to post or respond to messages. Okay.
So if you're a total like coding neophyte like I am, my eyes glaze over the second I see any kind of JavaScript. Which one did you recommend?
In that case, I would definitely say go to Code Academy, because they will start you from the very basics. And one really cool thing about the lessons is they don't get too technical too fast.
Okay,
so all the lessons, are in plain English, and they really help you understand what you're doing.
So can I just jump in and kind of clarify for anyone watching? Everything in AdWords scripts is done in JavaScript, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to confirm that one.
All right. All right, so first we're going to walk you through a little bit of script implementation. So this is just going to be kind of a basic run through with just a few screenshots. We're going to kind of talk it through with you guys. But for a more detailed walkthrough, visit PPC Hero for our AdWords script series. And we've included the first hyperlink below, and you can find it on the site. That's a text walkthrough with some screenshots. You can also find a link to the part 2 of that series, which is Sam giving you a breakdown in video form of just how to implement these scripts in your account. But to start with, how to begin, you go to the bulk operations section of the AdWords interface. It's on the left-hand side of the interface, down beneath like the campaign tree and all that stuff, in between shared library and reports. And when you click through on that, it'll bring you to the bulk operations interface where you have automated scripts, automated rules, scripts, and then the bulk editing interface.
Cool, and I just wanted to kind of clarify then. So we have automated rules and we have scripts. Jacob, what's really the difference there?
Well, the differences in the scripts is you are going to define everything. The automated rules are actually really cool and can do some similar things. Maybe you could change your bids or even get some form of alerts. But the real issue there is that you can only do through that what Google wants you to do. You can only use those pre-selected settings.
Right.
One of the things that we will go through, like we talked about the alerts, is what if I want an alert and I want to use my own date ranges? I don't want to use those intervals that Google gives me. I could do that through scripts, but I couldn't do that through the rules without creating a whole bunch of rules. And one other thing about the scripts is you can also work at multiple levels. These rules, they might just work at the keyword level, the ad group, or the campaign.
Right.
But with scripts, you can have one script that checks the metrics or whatever you're looking for across all these different metrics, and then make changes and report on them all at the same time.
Okay, yeah, that definitely seems like a pretty strong difference to make note of. But so automated rules definitely sound like they have their uses. So if you have no experience at all with like automation or scripts at all, that might be a good place to get your feet wet before moving into like the fully customizable scripts. But scripts definitely seem like they're a little bit more powerful.
Yes, they definitely are.
Okay.
It just takes a little more investment and some learning.
So clicking through that scripts interface, both the links we've highlighted there, brings you to the basic script interface where you manage it. And all you have to do to get started is just press the Create Script button. And doing that brings you into the main interface. And we've highlighted a few different buttons here that you'll need to make note of as you start to implement scripts. So the main text box is where you'd actually enter in your JavaScript code. And that's where you'd either copy and paste or actually do the coding, depending on your experience level with JavaScript. And then I've highlighted the first one, and that's the Save button. That's where you would save the code. And then there are a few others that I think both Sam and Jacob have a bit more experience with. So
sure. So the Authorize Now button is something just to be aware of. It's you need to make sure you authorize your code, tell Google that you've kind of given permission for it to interfere with what you're doing in your user interface. So it just needs you to do that, and I think you click that and it will bring up another kind of confirm button. So make sure you do that if you're going to be running your codes on an interval or whatever. And then preview. So Jacob, my understanding is this just is kind of like a debugger, or is this just a kind of practice script implementation? How does it work?
Well, it's actually a little bit of both. There's no actual debugger in the script interface. There is script.google.com, which has the debugger, but I use the preview both as the debugger and the simulator. What the preview button does is it runs the script for about 30 seconds and simulates what would happen. And in those 30 seconds, most of the syntax errors and things like those nature would pop up. But it'll also give you, like in the log file, what's going to pop out. It tells you, are you pulling the right metrics? Are all the calculations going correctly?
Cool.
Okay, great.
So I just wanted to introduce you guys to Google's resources on this topic. If you haven't been there already, I'd really recommend going to developers.google.com/AdWords/scripts, because this is pretty much where you'll find all the examples and tutorials that we're going to be talking about today. And it's just really easy place to get started. So if you look on the little tree on the left-hand side there, if you go to examples, you should see something like this, and these are the complete scripts which are highlighted just here. So Google already gives you a load of scripts you can get using, and some of these are pretty basic, but the really useful thing is you have the kind of segments of JavaScript pre-built for you. So we're just going to jump in and really quickly show you the example of the get each campaign's cost and clicks last month script. So here you are. This is the JavaScript. If you haven't seen JavaScript before, it might be a little intimidating, but we'll just walk you through kind of what's been said here. So I don't know if Jacob, if you just want to really quickly explain the script here.
Well, really, just if you want to break it down in plain English, what is happening is this first top chunk right here, you have your main function, and inside you see the var campaign iterator. What that is doing right there is collecting all the campaigns in that account with the condition with more than 10 impressions over the last month, and then pulling those back. And then the next part, it says while the campaign iterator has next, like I said, the iterator collects all the campaigns.
Right.
It goes through each one of those campaigns on the list and then gets their stats for that same month. And then the logger log is just a very basic like text output. And what it says right there is for the last month in the campaign, it's going to print the campaign name, the cost, and the clicks, and then return that back to you.
Okay, so yeah, it definitely seems like that top chunk is where you define which campaigns are going to have that data pulled, and then the second chunk is where it actually pulls the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I assume I could also just go in and change where it says impressions to clicks or cost, and then where it says 10 to any number of my choosing, and last month to any date range of my choosing as well.
Yes, you can definitely do that. You can also possibly do less than. Maybe you want to start looking at your campaigns and say, maybe I have some that aren't getting enough impressions, so I want to look for under maybe 5,000 or something, and that's how I want to look at them.
Cool.
Okay.
And then if you actually copy and paste this script into the scripts interface and run it, you'll see a logger output like we have displayed here. And you can see it simply outputted the campaign name, which I've covered up just for confidentiality of our clients, and then it tells you the number of clicks each campaign received and the cost. So this script by itself is not something that you guys are going to take away and think this is revolutionary, but we just really wanted to show you how it works and what happens. So this is like one of the most basic examples of a script, but you can see kind of the logic in the JavaScript and how it's outputting stuff. And then we're going to kind of dive in and try and find a few more real examples that might actually be helpful to you guys. So, just to kind of go over again, so in the interface there's a Get Examples button, and all those examples I showed a couple of seconds ago, they're actually in there, so you can just quickly grab them and copy that JavaScript down. And there's one here for labeling ads that are performing poorly. So if you look in the JavaScript on the right-hand side here, you can see with condition, click-through rate is less than 0.01. So what that'll do is it'll add a label over the last 7 days to any ads that have performed with a really bad click-through rate. And you can manually define what you think a bad click-through rate is, and then it'll label them. You can just pull them, and instantly that's your list of ads to work on. So it's something that's pretty straightforward to do, but again, that's kind of useful. And there's a few of those codes knocking about in the interface that Google has right there for you to use that are probably going to be somewhat helpful, at least in your account analysis.
And then I was just saying, if I just want to throw one quick note in there, like we had said that, the last one we went over with the total cost and clicks, how that's very simple. And it's not necessarily revolutionary, but I actually made something similar to that for another account manager where she needed certain stats to send to a client. So I pulled the stats she needed from a certain amount of campaigns, and the nice thing was it pulled all of those automatically for her and ran in 2 seconds. It's not hard to go through the interface and find it yourself, but definitely using the filters, it's a few more steps, and it definitely takes more than those 2 or 3 seconds.
Right. Yeah. And the other nice thing, though, is that as you kind of look through these codes, you'll see you'll see a lot of comments included in the codes that'll kind of explain what each chunk is doing. So even if you're not at all familiar with coding like I am, you can still kind of build up your literacy just by kind of paying attention to what's in the coding and recognizing some pretty similar lines of code.
And that double / you can see in line 2, that's just a note in the code. So that actually just tells you what's happening, and that doesn't affect the actual application of what's going on.
And then once you finally save your script, you'll find these back in sort of the scripts management interface. They're all listed here. So there's like an alert system test or an ad review test, some of the different functions that you can do with these scripts. You can also then run the scripts or have the option to create kind of a schedule, again, making kind of a very powerful alert system and just automating the process and making your life quite a bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for this one, you can see we have an alert system, and that emails us every day at 6 a.m. So when we get into our emails in the morning, we can see straight away if there are any issues with our accounts. And we'll kind of come on a little bit later to how we've set those alerts up and what they tell us.
All right, so now we're going to kind of dive into some of the scripts that we found both on the Google Developers resource and also throughout the internet to kind of give you an idea of what these scripts are capable of and how you can make use of them in your own accounts. So the first one is a quality score tracker, and we found this one courtesy of Martin Rothgerding. You can find him on Twitter at BlueMarty, and he's from PPC Epiphany. And he designed a really nice script where it utilizes labels on a selected stable of keywords to track your quality score progress. Now, it seems kind of self-evident how useful it is, but can you give some kind of use cases for why you might want to put this into in practice?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that just for me, I've always wanted a historic quality score tracker within AdWords. I know Bing do it, but it's kind of one of the lacking features I'd really like to see, mainly because if I make a lot of changes to my account or I change my landing page out, I want to know if when Google's running their algorithm that it's having an impact, either good or bad. And I'd like the historic quality score just so I can kind of pinpoint either the week or the month where things started to tumble if they did, or where they got better, or just how things are going in general if I'm performing a lot of account maintenance. So this is pretty useful. I think this is one of the better scripts we use. That's why we got it as the first one we're telling you guys about. I think you can just Google PPC Epiphany AdWords scripts quality score tracker, and it'll be in there, right? Well,
yeah, it's also included in our AdWords script series posts, so you can just find a link there. There have been a few different iterations of this script. The first one was one where you'd actually copy and paste your top 150 or so keywords into a Google Doc, and then it would pull the information from the Google Doc that these were the keywords that you wanted to track, and then it would pull the information from AdWords. So this latest one is actually a little bit it's pretty slick, actually, by the way it uses labels to pull the data. Like, you've already selected just via the AdWords interface which keywords you want to track. And yeah, it seems like it'd be super useful just because quality score is one of the most important metrics that we can kind of use in PPC. So being able to track its progress as you do campaign breakouts or change landing pages or optimize your ad copy, like being able to track those changes over time is super useful. Do you have any notes about how the script actually works, Jacob?
What to expect with the script? I would say one of the things that I have tried to show to the other account managers I think they really enjoy is that it's actually super easy to use. When you look at the code, it's kind of complex. There are a lot of symbols, a lot of lines of code in there. But one of the nice things is it does almost everything for you. Once you put this in your account, it creates the labels for you. Mm-hmm. And it also creates the spreadsheet, and you don't actually have to do anything besides tag the keywords, and it can track everything for you.
Yeah, so this is the result of that particular script. So we have the date, the campaign, ad group, keyword, and then the quality score. And then that final column on the right-hand side is where you see the quality score change over time. So whether it's a 0 or a -2 or -1, you can kind of track your progress as you make changes.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool, right? I mean, we're effectively taking the keywords we value as important in the account and getting a list in Google Docs form of where they've changed, depending on how regularly we want to run. So you can do it monthly or weekly, or every day if you really want. How does it deal with this, Eric? When it so say I've run it once and I run it again, what's it going to look like?
Well, it keeps kind of a running log. So after you've finished up running the script once and you run it again, it'll just continue to add on these lines to the bottom of the report. So you'll still have all your previous data in view, but then it'll just continue to add to the bottom of the report.
Cool.
But there is one thing to note, though, is that this is one of the more complex scripts. So each script has a limit of 30 minutes in terms of runtime. So that's why you kind of want to limit the amount of keywords you use to about 150 to 200. Because otherwise doing so will probably make this script run over the allotted time and kind of limit the usefulness to you. So make sure to concentrate on your top keywords. Now, the second script we wanted to talk about is bidding by weather forecast. This is one of the codes that you can find on the Google Developers resource. So what is it? It's a bid modifier. It works by drawing weather forecast data via an API key from Weather Underground, and then it modifies your bids based on that information. So it sounds pretty useful, right, Sam?
Well, I imagine, kind of being from England, all I can think about is how much it rains. So, you think of like a an online merchant who sells umbrellas or something, they're going to be a lot more in people's minds when it's raining than when it's not. So that's kind of an example. But I guess a real world example that we've seen with our clients is one of our clients operates a golf course, and one of their campaigns is for kind of on the day booking. And if it's sunny outside, that campaign does a lot better than if it's raining. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of playing golf in a thunderstorm.
No, I think we all found out what happens when you do that from the movie Caddyshack. So,
Oh dear.
so yeah, but if you're a business who's focused on like you have an interest in foot traffic and you have a physical location that people can visit, and you know that your business is impacted by the kind of weather you face, then this is definitely something to kind of explore using. So this is the actual script, and I've kind of highlighted a few of the interesting sections here. So the top line where it says register for an API key, that's where you would input the API key that you would then pull the weather data from. So that's where it draws that external data into the script and kind of uses that in the second and the third boxes to modify your bids based on the information pulled from Weather Underground. So you could say if it's the temperature is above 50 degrees, or if it's sunny out, you can modify your bids by X%. So it's definitely kind of a very powerful way to modify your bids based on what the weather's doing.
And I think another thing to kind of highlight here is that this doesn't just apply to weather forecasts, this applies to anything with an API. So if you can find somewhere that tells you when sports games are on, maybe you want to advertise your local sports bar or something. That's a pretty basic example, but you can work with whatever APIs are out there to pull information in that might affect how you're bidding on Google. So
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
cool. So can I just ask Jacob a quick question then? So this looks like it's set up to modify depending on your temperature, is that right?
And by wind miles per hour.
So how exactly would that work? What would I put in that script?
Would you put in the one thing you just have to define is make sure that you have those parameters for what you really want. I'm sure there's certain thresholds, maybe depending on how advanced the golfers at your course are, how much wind they can play with in your temperatures.
Right.
So I've had someone ask what an API is, and it's just kind of an online system that interfaces between between an application. So what's an application?
It's an application programming interface.
Thank you for the save.
It's kind of tricky to think about it. Sometimes I always forget about everyone just calls it API.
Yeah, here's where the coder comes into play. That's why we love them.
So in AdWords we know there's an API. So an API means you can kind of interface between something outside of AdWords and with AdWords. So if you have like your own system that changes bids for you, like a Marin or an Acquisio or a Kenshu, they'll use the API to go in and change your keywords in your bids. And that can also work with non-AdWords stuff. So an API will just pull data or make changes to data kind of real time through an application, right?
Yeah, all it really is a system for connecting two pieces of software together. So like we said, the API for the weather service pulls the weather data, or as in the other one I was thinking about, you guys were saying maybe you run a sports shop for like e-commerce, and you maybe want to pull those sports scores after the Super Bowl, and you're like, I'm really going to push these Ravens jerseys.
That works. Cool.
And then conversely, bid down on the 49ers jerseys. So.
No, it's kind of an advanced topic. It's one of those things that you'll probably have to go to reference material, get it to work, because it's going to be a little bit particular to each situation. But yeah, it's definitely just something we wanted to show you to kind of give you an idea of what you can do.
And one of the things we want to kind of keep highlighting through this webinar is that neither Eric or I are really experts at all in this. And Jacob knows his stuff, but he's not a JavaScript expert either. He just kind of has experience with it. So if you want to build something complicated, obviously what we're trying to do is give you some ideas that you could take to maybe a web developer on your team, or a freelancer you could go and hire and get them to build something for you. So it's about knowing what the opportunities out there are to think about what's worth spending your time to build.
Yeah, and also, even in spite of the fact that Sam or I really don't have any coding experience, it's still super easy to implement these codes into your account. So there's value even to non-coders like us to kind of plug and play these in there and kind of extend the functionality beyond what AdWords can do on its own. So the third script we wanted to talk about is actually that kind of exact thing. So it's an ad copy countdown. This is also another one of the examples provided by Google. It modifies your ad copy based on kind of a countdown. So how does it work? It actually parameterizes your ads and allows you to count down or change your ad copy based on the scripting used. So obviously there are a lot of uses here. Sam's probably the big one that looms on everybody's mind, especially if you're in e-commerce, right?
Yeah, I think this is great for something like Black Friday, if you're counting down to a sale, or if you have a sale that's expiring from your e-commerce website. So, say you've got, President's Day sale expiring on President's Day or the day after it. What it will do is go in and change your ads or the parameters within your ads to say how long is left to run of the sale, and it does it without you having to do anything, which is great because in the past I've done stuff like this, or I've had to upload a new set of ad copy every day saying 7 days left, 6 days left, and the parameter function really is great. I guess we can show that.
Yeah. So this is the actual script, and you can also find this again on the the Google Developers resource. We've highlighted a few of the interesting parts that will kind of show you the functionality here. So the top highlighted box where it says var end date, that's where you'd actually input the end date of your sale. And then the second box is where you see the actual countdown itself. So you set two different parameters. So you can see the two slashes where it says we want to update squiggly bracket param1 to use our calculated days and squiggly bar param2 for hours. That's where it would count down. So if you had 2 days and 4 hours left, it would say you would input into your ad copy those params and it would count down, and you'd see something kind of like this. So this is an example ad that you'd see using this parameterized ad where it's a holiday sale, doors open in 2 days, 4 hours, and that automatically counts down based on the information that you've input into that script and the params that you use in the ads.
So, Eric, so my ad in this case, the description line 1 here would say doors open in...
Yeah, param1, param2. Probably using the squiggly brackets. But yeah, using those parameters, kind of the way that you can use in Bing, but this is a bit more dynamic in that it automatically updates.
That's pretty cool. I noticed Google have made an error here. They've put 2 exclamation marks. So.
yeah, that is definitely a disapproved ad waiting to happen. But I suppose nobody's perfect, right?
Exactly.
We'll give it a break this time.
Yeah, this time. But our eyes on you, Google. And then the fourth script that we wanted to talk about is a keyword performance report. It's another one of the specific ones you can find on the Google Developers resource. It provides both charts and graphs to track keyword performance by quality score and average position. So this automatically pulls all of your keyword performance data into a Google Drive spreadsheet, and then it gives you impressions, clicks, click-through rate, and cost data across both quality score and average position. So obviously it seems pretty useful, right, Sam?
Sure. I mean, particularly when you're looking at something like clicks by quality score, you want to see what the breakdown in your account is, how many of your impressions are coming at quality score 7 or above, how many are down in the dumps, and then also looking by position. So you might want to see where your best position is in terms of click-through rate, see what the spread is, maybe try and make some decisions on whether it's worth bidding up to be in that higher position, what you think is going to happen to your click-through rate. So this is pretty cool. And if you see the results tab we've got here, this is one that we've been a little bit clever with and added a custom snippet of code to it to give us our conversions and conversion rate, because one of the things I really wanted to see was firstly how our conversion rate was affected by average position. So this is just being a bit more clever with AdWords, is trying to work out, actually, does my conversion rate go up in position 3? Is that the best kind of cost per conversion position to be in? Or is it worth just going to number 1 or not? So, Jacob, do you want to speak a little bit about how you added that?
For this one, it's actually pretty simple. I guess it's a little hard to go through speaking about it, but I can kind of give you the gist of it. We were talking earlier about the iterators where I'm pulling all of these, and then usually there will be something after that where you have to tell the program to get the stats for. And the nice thing about that is that's kind of another blanket command where it pulls all the stats, so then I have to take it down one level. And by default, the script that Google's going to give you is going to give you the quality score, keyword, number of keywords, impressions, clicks, CTR, and cost. And all I really had to do for that was just add get conversions, and then the conversion rate was something I had to enter manually, as in the conversions divided by the clicks.
Right. But yeah, so basically the code was like one of those chunks we saw before where it would just say like get impressions, but then you're just adding something to the end of it saying, oh, and by the way, I'd love some conversion data too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually takes a lot longer to explain, but if you look at it, maybe there might be 10 little snippets of extra code in there.
And just to kind of talk about this, so if you wanted to do this manually, you'd have to pull it into Excel, you'd have to add something for the quality score at least, or the average position to get everything between 1 and 1.99, and then you'd have to pull it into a pivot table and maybe rearrange it and make it look nice, whereas this just pulls it straight into Google Docs, laid out as you want every single time.
Right.
You can set it to run once a week and just email you to let you know it's done. You can print it out, email it over to a client, share it with a client. It's really great, and you can also set it up. So this Google one comes with a load of graphs set up with it too. So
yeah,
just kind of if you want the visual representation. So this is great. I think just a few tweaks here and there, and that really helps it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing we want to go over is creating your own alert system. So how you build a basic alert script. We'd also take a metric such as cost and create basically the logic for pulling the data. I know we've kind of gone over a little bit of that with like these different iterator functions, but also how to send an email if there's say too much variance over a specific period of time.
So just to let you guys know, the scripts are kind of new to us as well. And what we decided was what's the most valuable thing we can get our scripts to do, and kind of get Jacob to work on them. And we decided that if we could have kind of custom alerts of old, but that were a little bit more clever than just the ones you can automate through Google, that would be really useful for us. So I guess we're going to go over in a bit more detail. Here, Jacob, maybe you want to talk about the advantages of using a script to do this rather than just Google's automate feature.
Well, we kind of went over this earlier, with the rules, you can do what Google allows you to do, but with the scripts, you can do that and more, and we talked about how customizable it is. Maybe I want to compare a lot of different things at once. I know some of our alerts, instead of, like a rule, I would have to just look at clicks, but maybe I want to look at clicks, impressions, and cost at one time. I don't want to have to set up all these different rules for that. And that's probably the main advantage of the scripts.
So can automated, like the automated emails, can they do anything like variance, or is it just like a flat statistic that it measures?
Oh boy, someone asked me about this. I know in analytics it can do some of the variances, but it's not as flexible as I think it should be. And in the AdWords, I know it's not as comprehensive as the analytics. So I would recommend going the scripts route.
In AdWords, you can say, send me an alert if my conversions are lower than 10 today, but you can't say, send me an alert if this Monday my conversions are 20% lower than they were last Monday, which is kind of the thing we do. So, and we've got that all set up just to email us and let us know if there are any kind of potential issues there.
Definitely. Okay, and now we are kind of going to go through a basic script. It's going to be kind of a little bit of a mix here. I don't want to get too deep and throw everyone off, but also kind of want to show you just the basic logic of how you do this. As I said, a lot of these little code snippets you can find other places, so hopefully here you can get some takeaways and just understand maybe the basic logic so you can start plugging things in, start playing around with it, and that's the best way to really learn.
So I think if you're anything like me, you're just going to want to pay attention to the comments mostly. But
yes, on this, make sure to put comments in there just to kind of write it out. And I think it's one of the metaphors that probably actually fits. They're called programming languages, and to an extent, they are kind of a language, and you have to learn to read it and write it. And these comments kind of bridge that little translation gap for you.
Kind of like a Rosetta Stone for JavaScript, right?
Okay, so the first chunk we're going to go for here is just initializing the data. We talked about before, I want to pull everything and all the data I need for my comparisons. So for this, I have it creating a new date, and then below that, we have the get data from the past. This is what's called a function. It's kind of a bunch of lines of code, like a standard process for pulling something out, like maybe the simplest one is like a square root or something.
Right.
And here, what this does is you have get data from the past, in the parentheses you have the number of days, and from that point it'll take the date, which we have today's date, and then roll back that many days. You can kind of define.
Okay.
I guess I really should have prefaced this by saying the issue that we need this is because JavaScript's default way of declaring dates is not the way that Google wants theirs. That's why if you look in there, it says return utilities, year, month, date, because that's the format it needs. So then the second part, we have our second date, which we used to. Okay, compare, and then next we move into the iterator, and for this, I just want to pull all my campaigns because I want to look at an account wide, and I make two variables to hold the cost.
So can I just quickly ask then, so what we've done there is just grab all our data, basically. We've told for how many days, how many days ago, and what data we want to grab.
Yeah, and since I didn't declare any real conditions in the campaign, I said just get all of them.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and the next one, we went over this a little bit for the has next, but now it goes through that bucket full of campaigns I have, and then pulls the stats for the 2 different days, yesterday and the same day from last week, so we can do day over day for the weeks.
Okay.
And then the next part is you see total cost. Really, that's just taking each campaign and adding them together.
Okay.
The plus equals is kind of like shorthand for saying just add them all together.
Okay, definitely. And then here's where you create the alert, right?
This is the actual alert, and I'll give you the mail itself is pretty standard, like the recipient, but I'll explain that first line there. The first thing is we have our 2 dates. We have 2 dates, and the total cost we compare. If the total cost has changed by more than 50% upwards, I want this alert to send. Or, which is those 2 bars next to each other, or if the total cost is less than 50% of the day before. So 50% plus or minus, I just put it in one line. And if we have an issue with the cost, it'll send that to the fake email telling you spend's too high. And if not, the else, it just says everything's fine. So you know, it ran, but I don't have to check on anything right now.
Okay, sounds great.
So I guess if we skip to the next slide, this is an example email. This was from my inbox the other day. This is the kind of thing we get. So this is telling me that one of my accounts had a 20% change in impressions, and it just tells me, like, I get in, it's sent at 7 a.m. When I start work, I check, and it'll tell me all my accounts where this maybe been an issue, so I can see if the account was down yesterday, or that conversions were slow, or impressions were way too high, and which is something we see too, right? I mean, we've seen a client get mentioned by a celebrity, and the impressions spike like crazy, and we want to know what's happening. And I think one of the key things, whether you're working for a client or whether you're working for your boss or whoever, is just catching these things quickly. The quicker you catch it, the more in the know you look. So this is something that really helps us out, and also helps us prevent wasting any money or anything. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's just being proactive about keeping up to date on the changes that are happening in your account.
And next, the further modifications. We've said this a few times. It's very easy to make some of these small changes, like get cost and get clicks. And for that, I would say, go ahead and try those out, as long as, especially if you are just trying to send emails or using the logger and you aren't changing anything in your account, you won't break anything using these. So you're free to play around with them. And then we had a few things, changing for certain variations, looking for a certain amount of impressions. Just change those numbers. That's all you have to do to change your parameters. And then if you want more help, you can look to Google's tutorials or the outside sources we mentioned earlier. One more to throw out is to say freeadwordscripts.com. I don't know the owner personally, but he's very active on the forums for the AdWords scripts, and he's got a lot of cool scripts on there, and he's continually updating that. So
I think for kind of newbies like me and Eric, it's just trying to hook in with the community and see what scripts we can find that have already been written, right? And then maybe try and work our way through either a code academy or something to having a very basic understanding of these scripts, so we can tweak them for our own personal needs to either change like what an email alert would say to us, or what, which stats it's looking for, rather than building the codes from scratch. So.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you can learn in a day, but if you just kind of keep at it a little bit, very quickly you can get competent in it, and then eventually, start writing your own.
Right, and I imagine if you're the kind of person who can do this, then you're pretty marketable to any companies needing to do PPC out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure, Sam. I would say that is definitely something to think about, because one of the things that I really like about these scripts is that Google is continually updating these scripts and trying to make them more useful for people in the industry.
Cool. Well, I think that pretty much covers the kind of meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today. We have a final poll here, just coming up in 1 second. So we just wanted to ask anyone out there, if you are managing accounts with over $15,000 in spend, or you have over $10,000 in budget, would you like either a free solutions blueprint, which is something where we'll go through your account and do kind of a mini audit for you and kind of make suggestions that could really help you out, or just do the reach analysis and see what we can learn for you guys there. So these are pretty cool things we offer, and if you are interested, just kind of answer the poll there.